Podcast City Network.
Hey guys, and welcome to another exciting episode of Final Score, episode 131. We are now into December, which also means bowl season is right around the corner, and there's going to be so much to cover with that. Yes, Jimmy, those drawings do look a lot like us. Funny how that works. But definitely got a great episode lined up for tonight, but you definitely need to make sure to follow us on social media at PCN Final Score on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram. Go on there, smash those like, follow, and subscribe buttons and help spread the word of Final Score. And if you could, just hit the reaction and share buttons for us too on this video. Help share episode 131 to everybody you know, because hey, who shouldn't be watching Final Score? Come on now. But we're going to jump into the college football top six, our final rankings of the year, and excuse me, a little bit of a shakeup this week as we saw Bama take down Georgia 41-24 in the SEC championship game. Absolutely crazy game. Was real close to start out, and then Bama just took away with it, but they did lose one of the wide receivers for the year to an injury. So, and yes, Jimmy, you definitely owe me $5 for that Jets-Eagles outcome. So, hey, I told you the Eagles were going to win. It just took a little bit of Minshew mania to do it. But more on that later. Still, Alabama coming in as your new number one team. Number two, Michigan, after just thrashing Iowa 42-3 in the Big Ten championship. They're number two now. Georgia now falls to number three, and Cincinnati holds pat at 4 after beating Houston 35-20 in the AAC championship. So that is your top four going to the playoff. First team out, sadly, is my Fighting Irish, Notre Dame, after being idle last week. No conference championship or anything like that for them this year. But, you know, with everything happening with Brian Kelly and all that, not too surprised that they got held out and things just didn't fall their way. Had Bama lost, who knows what we'd be talking about right now. But we'll definitely see what happens. And number 6, Ohio State, who was also idle, not playing in the Big Ten championship after losing to Michigan. So they come in at 10-2. Now, a lot of these matchups are going to be pretty interesting. Our first two out, we're going to see Ohio State in the Rose Bowl playing Utah, winner of the Pac-12, after also thrashing Oregon, not once, but twice this year. But they will meet in the Rose Bowl for what will figure to be a very exciting game. Notre Dame to meet Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl. But our matchups for the college football playoff is going to see Alabama versus Cincinnati and Michigan versus Georgia. It's going to be absolutely crazy games. We'll definitely see if Cincinnati can actually hold snuff to their 13-0 record and show that they actually belong in this playoff, having been the very first non-Power 5 school to qualify for the playoff. So it's going to be very interesting all the way through. But this week, though, we still have one more game before we hit bowl season, and that's the classic Army-Navy game. 8-3 Army taking on 3-8 Navy. Army favored pretty big in this. Game will be Saturday, 3 p.m. on CBS. Only game of the weekend until bowl games start on the 17th. Army definitely figures to be able to win this one. Navy being pretty dismal this year. But Navy will probably put up a fight because it's always the service academies. So, you know, we'll see what happens. But come next week, we're going to do more breakdown going into bowl season, start giving you the week-by-week bowl matchups, and start breaking those down for our college football segment. And as we get closer, we'll start breaking down the playoff as well. So definitely make sure to stay tuned for future episodes for that content. It can be some really great stuff. But speaking of content, you definitely need to make sure to check out all of our content platforms, which if you're looking for audio offerings, you can find it on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Pandora, TuneIn, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Podcasts, Player FM, Bullhorn, Castbox, and Listen Notes, where you can also find the video portions on YouTube or here on Facebook. So definitely make sure to check those out. And you can also now find our audio portions also on Facebook, on our Facebook page. Just search at PCN Final Score and you'll be able to find that there. But all this and more is located on podcastcity.net/Final Score, which is the hub for Final Score. You can go on there and find all of our social media outlets, all of our content outlets, everything to do with Final Score, even our merch. You can find it all there. So definitely make sure to check that out. And like always, hit those like, follow, and subscribe buttons for us. We definitely appreciate it. But moving on to our next segment and catching my breath a little bit here. Marcus Freeman is now named the new head coach of Notre Dame after serving as defensive coordinator for Notre Dame this past season. I think that Notre Dame finally, really, truly got it right. Not chasing after guys like Luke Fickell or Bill Napier or any of these guys. No, they decided to be smart and stay in-house and bring back Marcus Freeman as the head coach, which has led to a slew of recruits staying committed to Notre Dame, a slew of coaches staying with Notre Dame, including Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator. Just so much going on because Brian Kelly at one point was trying to poach that Notre Dame staff to take to LSU, but not a single one has gone. So hats off to you, Jack Swarbrick, for definitely keeping this team together, making the right call with Father Jenkins to make sure that Marcus Freeman became the 30th head football coach of Notre Dame. So Marcus Freeman will be the head coach going into the Fiesta Bowl, so you definitely can expect that. And then his first regular season game will be next year, or sorry, I guess you could say, next year because we're still in 2021. But he'll coach against Ohio State in his very first regular season game, which definitely will be very, very interesting after we saw Notre Dame drop the 2022 schedule today. So we'll definitely see how all that works out. But hats off to Marcus Freeman getting the job. Definitely a great hire, and I expect a lot of great things because he is definitely a player's coach. So going to be a lot of great things, just like all the great things going on over at the Podcast City Network shop, because whether it's a neck gaiter to protect you from COVID-19, a mug for your morning coffee, or a t-shirt just to look cool, we got you covered. Get the latest apparel and gear for your favorite podcast and Podcast City Network by visiting podcastcity.net/shop and checking out the lineup. And huge shout outs right now to Everett Lee in the chat. Appreciate you posting those links for us. You can go into the chat and find the links for Final Score, the Podcast City Network page on, the Final Score page on Podcast City Network. Let me English today. And, of course, the Podcast City Network shop. So definitely make sure to go check those out. And also another shout out to Doug. We appreciate you there being in the chat. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to our Week 14 predictions. I definitely made a comeback last week going 10-4 in my picks, bringing my overall record to 94, 68, and 1. So not too shabby, I have to say, but hopefully we can continue to improve upon that. And with this week, break that 100 mark of 100 wins on the season for myself. First game being the Thursday night game, Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Pittsburgh, man, getting that narrow victory over the Baltimore Ravens last week. The Vikings being embarrassed by the Detroit Lions. Doesn't really seems almost like a mismatch, even though they have very similar records right now. So I foresee that the Steelers are going to end up taking this one on the road against the Vikings. I think the Steelers are just got a little bit more of a roll. They're going to be coming off that high of beating the Ravens and maybe able to roll this into another win against the Vikings. Vikings still without, Dalvin Cook as of right now. So rushing games figures like it's going to be a problem for them. So something to keep an eye out on, but I definitely got Steelers winning this one. Probably in a close game, but still winning it. Looking at our Sunday lineup, starting with the 1 p.m. slot, Baltimore Ravens at 8-4, traveling on over to Cleveland to take on the Browns at 6-6. Ravens coming off, like we said, that disappointing loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cleveland, on the other hand, had a very interesting week. It seems like everything just ends up being interesting for the Cleveland Browns. Oh, man, my whole system just kind of glitched out a little bit. Bear with me. God, you gotta love technology. Browns were off last week, so coming off the bye, the Browns are going to figure to be doing a little bit better going into this game, but I still think the Ravens have the better team, and I think this is going to be a good bounce-back game for them. Ravens take this one by a touchdown. Oh, yeah, I know, David C. Russell. Boo the Browns. Boo the Browns. They are the Browns, after all. Our next game, though, we have the 2-10 Jacksonville Jaguars traveling on out to Tennessee to take on the 8-4 Titans. Titans are going to be the better team on paper here, no matter what. Jacksonville just absolutely dismal, especially coming off the loss they had where they just got thrashed by the Rams 37-7 last week. So it definitely doesn't figure to be very good for them in this one. Titans end up running away with it. I'm going to say by 13, maybe 14, somewhere around there, but Titans definitely take it. Next game, we have the Las Vegas Raiders at 6-6 taking on the 8-4 Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City coming off a huge win against the Broncos. Raiders dropping one and when I say very, I mean very narrowly to the Washington football team, 17-15. Raiders, man, looking for answers right now, and I don't think they're going to find it this week, as I think Kansas City, who is just on a roll, is going to end up taking this game. So Kansas City takes it and pushes themselves to 9-4. Our next game that we have the 5-7 New Orleans Saints taking on the 3-9 New York Jets. The Saints, let me see here, ended up being able to, oh my goodness, they lost their game to the Cowboys last week, 27-17. Oh wow, there's all these little things coming in. Look at that. You guys being active in the chat tonight, really appreciate that. Love the interaction. Saints losing to the Cowboys last week. The New York Jets losing to the Eagles also last week. Both these teams looking for a bounce back. Saints, I think, are the more talented team and have the better pieces in place, and should possibly have Alvin Kamara back. So, excuse me, that figures to be a huge boon for them. Even if not, I still have Mark Ingram, who's been able to rush the ball really, really well for him. So I think that this one ends up being the Saints games all day long. Saints win in a close one. Our next game, though, we have those same 8-4 Dallas Cowboys taking on the 6-6 Washington football team. Both teams coming off of wins here. Washington showing that they still have a defense, even though they have lost Young for the year, Chase Young for the year. Dallas, though, I think offensively have the better pieces to be able to go match up against this defense. Dak Prescott and company should be able to come out here and win this one, but I think it's going to be very close. I'm talking like maybe a field goal kind of game, so don't expect this just to be a gimme. But Dallas still will win it, push themselves to 9-4. Next game is going to be a battle of 5-7s between the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Carolina just looking dismal after starting 3-0 this year, are now 2-7 since, looking absolutely horrible. Falcons not much better, but starting to get a little bit more of a roll recently. Even though they had the big loss to the Bucs last week, definitely looking for a bounce back this week, and especially trying to get it on the road against the division rival. I'm calling the Falcons to win this one close, possibly a touchdown, maybe even less, but Falcons win it. Our next game, we have the 4-8 Seattle Seahawks coming off their huge win last week, taking on the 2-10 Houston Texans, who got blanked by the Colts. Excuse me, got a tickle in my throat for some reason. But the Seattle Seahawks, I think, are definitely starting to get on a little bit more of a roll, starting to find themselves a little bit here after beating a decent team last week. I think should be able to go out, maybe not blank the Texans, but definitely be able to win this one by multiple scores. I'm calling a 17-point win by the Seattle Seahawks. Looking at our 405 games, though, we have the 1-10-1 Detroit Lions. That is right, they are winless no more, taking on the 6-6 Denver Broncos. I think the Lions can show they can put up a fight, but they're a horrible team. Let's be honest. Jared Goff, horrible since he's gone over to the Lions from the LA Rams. Denver Broncos, even though they had their loss, showed a little bit of fight against Kansas City. I think Denver is going to be able, especially at home, to be able to capitalize and be able to take this one a mile high. Denver Broncos win this one by 10. Next game, we got the 4-8 New York Giants taking on the 7-5 LA Chargers. The Giants, after their big win against the Eagles, come out and laid a dud last week against the Dolphins, 20-9. So definitely was not a good game for them. But the LA Chargers, on the other hand, came out and were just dominant, 41-22 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Absolutely kicking ass. I still think they're going to be able to roll and capitalize, being the better team, even without Keenan Allen because of COVID protocol. They'll still be able to make it happen. LA Chargers take this one, I think, in a landslide and end up pushing themselves to 8-5. Our next game that we have, though, 425 slot, San Francisco 49ers at 6-6, taking on the 7-5 Cincinnati Bengals. The Niners coming off that dismal loss to the Seattle Seahawks. And the Bengals coming off their embarrassing loss to the Chargers. Both teams looking for a good bounce back. I think the Bengals, though, are due for one. And I think this game's going to go down to the wire, but Cincinnati's going to use that home field advantage and be able to win this one by a field goal. Might even come down to a last possession kind of game. So definitely watch this one. I think it'll be very, very exciting. But still, I got Bengals winning this one close. Our next game, we're going to see the 7-5 Buffalo Bills taking on the 9-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa coming off their big win against the Falcons. The Bills coming off that very, very disappointing loss to the New England Patriots, where they just got gashed on the ground. Tampa, I think, is going to be able to capitalize on that as well with a decent running game and also a more suffocating defense than what the Pats even had. I think the Buccaneers end up winning this one by 10, maybe even 13, and push themselves to 10 wins on the season. Our Sunday night game, though, sees the 4-8 Chicago Bears taking on the 9-3 Green Bay Packers. That's right, David C. Russell, gashed. But the Bears and Packers, big rivalry game. Packers on a roll with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, just making it happen. Aaron Jones not even playing that bad. The Bears still looking for answers. I think they are turning back to Andy Dalton again this week, and it has not looked good. It really has not looked good for the Bears. Bears with a flurry of injuries, too, on the defensive side, including Khalil Mack. Packers end up winning this one, I think, by a landslide, 17, maybe even 20-point win by the Packers. And in our last game of the slate for Week 14 sees our game of the week, the LA Rams at 8-4 taking on the 10-2 Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals finding ways to win, even if it's Colt McCoy at quarterback. They find a way to make it happen, but Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins should be back this upcoming week without much of an issue, now with more rest, and I think are going to be able to try and capitalize on that, but everybody's due for a letdown. I'm taking the Rams in this one close by a field goal to push themselves to 9-4 and start inching closer to that NFC West division lead. Definitely watch out. This is going to be a very exciting game to watch. But remember, I called it here first. Rams win. But that is our NFL Week 14 predictions. Definitely make sure to come back and check next week on episode 132 to see how I did. 10-4 this past week, so hopefully we can keep that rolling and get some more wins this upcoming week. But you should also check out Podcast City Network, because FinalScore is a proud member of Podcast City Network and its 20-plus independent podcast members across all genres of podcasting. That, and we'll be having a big announcement coming from Podcast City Network here in the coming days, so definitely make sure to keep an eye out for that. But you can also find Podcast City Network on all major social media platforms, including Facebook.com/Podcast City Network, on Twitter and Instagram at Podcast City Net, on YouTube by searching Podcast City Network, and on the website podcastcity.net. Be creative, be independent, be yourself. Podcast City Network. Which brings us to our next order of business. Brent Venables becoming the new head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. And a huge move after being defensive coordinator for most recently Clemson. He had worked at jobs including Kansas State, Oklahoma, and Clemson. A lot of people think because of his work with Bob Stoops at Oklahoma that this is why he took this job, because this is also his first head coaching job. So definitely be interesting to see how Brent Venables is able to transition from being a coordinator to what Notre Dame always terms it as a CEO of a program. So we'll see how that works out. He will replace Lincoln Riley, who took the head coaching job at USC, and he's going to be in for a tall order because Lincoln Riley has been poaching a lot of five-star recruits. 5 so far have decommitted from Oklahoma, 1 going to Texas A&M, 4 going to USC with Lincoln Riley. So definitely not looking good on the recruiting trail, but hopefully Brent Venables is able to go in there and stabilize the program, get some of these recruits, be able to make something happen. But one thing he's got to deal with is that quarterback Spencer Rattler has already entered the transfer portal and will be leaving the Sooners. So he will also have to find an answer at quarterback going into 2022. So going to be very interesting to see what Brent Venables does with this team. Very surprising Lincoln Riley left for the USC job, but he's saying he's trying to make USC the mecca of college football now. So maybe that's the team that was his calling. Who knows? But either way, Brent Venables is your new head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. But something else you need to check out is City Limits Tap Room in beautiful DeLand, Florida. Don't know where I'm talking about? then go to 4425 North US Highway 17 in DeLand, Florida, and check out all the great offerings that they have between all the sports on all the myriad of TVs, all the great drink specials, food specials, entertainment, pool tables, whole nine. They got it. Inside, outside, they got you covered. So definitely make sure to go check it out in beautiful DeLand, Florida. But that does bring us to the good old meme madness, and got some good ones curated for you guys today. So definitely make sure that if you're listening to our audio offerings, that you go check out YouTube or Facebook to see the video portions, to see these memes, including this first one that says, "A Lions win is like the McRib. It only happens once a year." Oh, me. I couldn't help myself when I saw that one. And we don't try to be Lions bashers, but we do like to keep good old Craig in his place when it comes to his expectations of the Lions. So, but our next one says, Adrian Peterson figuring out how he can win a Super Bowl if he just joins every team. Oh, definitely a good one. Definitely a good one. Our next one says, Lamar Jackson just lost to a 300-pound man as mobile as a tree playing quarterback. I mean, it's true. We've seen him literally trip over a blade of grass before. Way to go, Ben Roethlisberger. Oh, man. Our next one, though, is the Baltimore Ravens literally handing the Patriots the first seed in the AFC. Oh, gotta love it. Gotta love it. But you know what? There's also good things that happened this past week, and we got to hand out a nice congratulations award to the Detroit Lions for winning a football game. You did it. Oh, my gosh. Too good. Too good. But if you didn't know about the Antonio Brown saga, he got busted for giving fake vaccination credentials to the franchise. Kind of looks a lot, probably looked a lot like this. Oh, my gosh. Too good. Oh, too good. Gotta love that good old eastbound and down. Oh, man. But our last one of the evening says, NFL MVP favorite, Tom Brady. NFL Coach of the Year favorite, Bill Belichick. What year is it? Oh, it's too good. Too good. But we thank you guys so much for viewing. Again, if you're listening to audio portions, you can go to Facebook at facebook.com/PCN Final Score or to YouTube by searching PCN Final Score, and you can check out any of our episodes. We've been doing Meme Madness now for 49 weeks, so definitely make sure to check it out. A lot of great stuff that we have every week, trying to bring you the funnies on here and keep everything lighthearted as much as possible. But we thank you guys again for viewing Meme Madness with us, which brings us to good old Podcast City Network. Because have you always wanted to start a podcast but didn't know how? Do you already have a podcast but don't know how to grow it? Are you trying to find ways to make your podcast profitable? You can learn to do it here at Podcast City Network. We offer consulting services and tutorial classes to help with learning to better expand your knowledge and to grow your show. We also give access to our network of shows to help with cross-promotion, guests, and overall reach, while also becoming a part of our ever-expanding PCN community based on people helping people. And the best part is, no membership fee. So what are you waiting for? Go to podcastcity.net/join now and join the fastest growing independent podcast network around, Podcast City Network. So definitely make sure to check it out. As you see, Everett Lee still posting up some links in our chat. So definitely make sure to check those out. Click on the links and go check out everything going on over there at Podcast City Network. But that does bring us to the good old give or go. And we got two good topics for this week. Starting first with Baltimore Ravens losing star cornerback Marlon Humphrey for the rest of the season because of a torn pectoral muscle, a huge blow to that Ravens defense. So we are going to give on this one just a little bit, but this really does hurt this defense. The defensive secondary, which is already dealing with issues and having not played the best against the pass this year as it is. So losing Marlon Humphrey really is a huge blow, and hopefully they're able to be able to bounce back in some way, have someone step up to be able to really help that Ravens defense stay afloat. The pass rush is decent, but you got to make sure you got guys in coverage that are able to get to the ball. So huge blow to the Baltimore Ravens, and we definitely wish Marlon Humphrey a speedy recovery. But our second one is, like we mentioned earlier, LA Chargers are putting their lead wide receiver, Keenan Allen, on reserve COVID-19 list. So definitely another huge blow. That was the number one receiver for the LA Chargers. So to lose him is a really big deal. And with this going now into this slate of games, they should be able to weather it okay. At worst, he's probably going to miss one game, maybe two, depending upon how quickly he's able to bounce back and test negative. So we'll definitely see how that works out. But the LA Chargers do have weapons still, so I think they'll be able to bounce back. And don't forget, they got Austin Eckler, so everything will be okay. So definitely make sure to keep an eye out on that, though, especially for fantasy football. If you have Keenan Allen, definitely make sure you're benching him. He has COVID. Saw a guy actually start a guy who had COVID, and it's like, what are you doing over here? Should never have happened. But that was our give or go, which does bring us to Podchaser. Because Apple Podcasts is no longer the only credible source for podcast discovery. You can follow creators, browse every podcast ever, and rate and review episodes. Just go to podchaser.com and search keyword FinalScore, one word, and follow, rate, and review us. And that does bring us to the week ahead, which, of course, we have the NFL Week 14 action happening this upcoming week, which, if you missed our picks, you can check out the playback earlier in the episode and see what our Week 14 NFL predictions were, and then check me next week when we see how I actually did. So definitely a lot of great stuff there. And, of course, we have the Army-Navy game, which is the only college football game this weekend. So definitely make sure to check it out. Saturday, 3 p.m. on CBS. And then starting next week, we're going to start doing our bowl game coverage. So a lot of exciting stuff when it comes to the college football side. But you also need to make sure to check out the PCN Sports lineup, including Not a Hockey Market podcast with JDM, the Nest podcast, the Rip Griffin Show, the Sportszilla podcast, and, of course, Fixed Edge, which was live earlier today at noon with good old S Money. So a lot of great stuff going on there. But you also need to make sure to check out episode 132 of Final Score next Tuesday live here on Facebook Live at 9 p.m. Eastern. Like I said, we're going to have college bowl game previews. We're going to have NFL Week 15 predictions and whatever other crazy news pops up. And hopefully we'll have a co-host for next week that we can interview as well. So we'll definitely see what happens. But we thank you guys so much for joining. Definitely can't wait till next week to see you guys again. But until then, definitely make sure to go check out all of our social media outlets at PCN Final Score. But until next time, I'm Chris. Well, and Chris. And you guys have just watched Final Score. Y'all have a great night.
Podcast City Network.